Let's talk about tracking with Google Analytics. Now, this is an analytics system, which means you add a tracking code onto any page of your website that you want Google Analytics to track. And the more pages you have the tracking code on, the better. And then when you go into your analytics account, you can kind of filter out the data that you need based on what you're looking for from all the data that it has collected. Now, when you set up an analytics account, you're going to need a Google account. You can either create a Google account or you can sign in with the Google account you have already. The main thing you want to bear in mind is just thinking about what you're using these Google accounts for already. For example, if you want to connect your AdWords advertising account with your Google Analytics account, which is something you can do to allow Google Analytics to automatically track your AdWords campaigns within Analytics, which is nice, then you'd want to use the same Google account for both. And then in the other direction, if you have an AdWords account or a Google account that you're using to manage some other website or some other niche, well, don't use that Google account to set up your analytics account. Use another one. So just kind of bear that in mind if you're going to sign in and create an analytics account on one of your existing Google accounts. I am going to go ahead and sign in on an account that I have, which does not have analytics attached to it yet, and I'll show you how to set it up. So I've signed in, and Google is going to ask me to sign up to start using Google Analytics. I've set up my Google account and I want to set up my first web property. Now Google sets this up, you have an account, and then below that you have properties, and then within each property you have a profile, and I'm going to kind of run through those. But I'm going to track a website. I'm going to choose Classic Analytics in this case. I'm going to go ahead and put a website name in here. And I'm Eastern Time, which is great. I'm going to leave that blank. I need to name my account because I'm setting this up for the first time. And I'm going to check sharing with other Google products only and not anonymously with third parties. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my tracking ID. Now once I've set up a web property, which is now SethKimball.com, I get a tracking ID, and this tracking ID is what Google's going to use to keep track of this particular property, which is SethKimball.com. Now within that, Google automatically sets up a profile for me, which is all the website data. Now there are ways, I'm not going to get into this in this video, but there are ways you can set up different profiles that will only show you specific data from this particular property. And so profiles is one way that you can kind of control. For example, you could have one profile that only tracks the data from your blog, and then you can have another profile that only tracks the data from your website that is not your blog. But you want to leave this one profile with all your website data alone so that you always have one profile that's collecting and displaying all the data. Now, in order for Google to start tracking on your website, you need to go to the Tracking Info tab, and it gives you some options here to choose whether you're tracking different subdomains, top-level domain, multiple top-level domains, etc. And then it gives you this code, and this is the code that you are going to need to copy and paste into your web pages. Now it gives you some implementation down here to explain how you should add this. But if you're adding it to a basic HTML page, then you're going to want to copy this code and then add it inside the header tag. And then I look at the source, you're going to see that I've got a head tag here, and then if I scroll down, I've got this end head tag, and you're going to need to paste that code of yours, this code which you copy, above this closing head tag in your web page. You can do this, or your web designer can do this, but you need to get that tracking code on every page that you want to track. Now, if you're working with PHP pages or a WordPress template or something like that, then there are other ways you can do this so that you're not copying and pasting it into many different pages. It's got a little example here of PHP implementation. I'm not going to cover that in detail, but your web designer can do that. Once you have that code copied onto the pages of your site, this should say status installed or tracking properly Right now it says status tracking not installed because I don't have that installed on my site yet, but this is where you'll see that it is properly detecting the tracking code on your web pages. So give it some time, maybe 24 hours once you add it on there. It should update sooner than that, but give it 24 hours before you get worried and start thinking you installed it incorrectly. Once you see that status tracking installed or tracking properly, then you can start to look at the data of what's happening on your site. At that point, I can click on the Home button over here, and you can see here is my account, here's my SethKimball.com web property, and then here's my default profile with all the website data. If I click there, I get into this dashboard where I can start seeing some of the data that's happening on my site. Now, this hasn't done any tracking yet, so there's no data here for me to go through. So I've logged into Chado.com Analytics, which we have going here, which has some more data in it, and I want to talk about some of the things you can find in your analytics account when you're looking at this data. So first of all, just to explain what each of these things are in general. So audience is basically all about your visitors. So you can see demographics, behavior, which has to do with, well, you can see new versus returning, frequency, how engaged they are, how long they spend on the site, things like that. Traffic sources is where those visits are coming from. Content is where they are landing, okay? So actually looking at the different pages that people are landing on and where they're going, stuff like that. And then conversions is, I'll talk a little bit more about goals a little later in this video, but basically conversions is when you have ways that you have told analytics to measure whether you are getting conversions on your site, then it can show you some of that in the conversions area. A couple things that I want to show you in particular you can discover. Now there's a lot to explore in analytics, but this is just a brief overview of a few things. So one thing is that if I go to content, site content, and then I just go to all pages, this is going to show me pages that people are landing on my website and the number of views, okay? Average time on the page, bounce rate, things like that for all these different pages on my site. So that's one just interesting place where you can see where are people landing, what are they doing when they get there. I also wanted to show a really cool little tool that Google has now under Audience, which is called Visitor Flow. And this is a nice way to really get an idea of what, where are people going and, where are they landing on this, on your site. So it's like a graphic that shows, so in this case it's showing the country territory, which is kind of interesting, but I'd probably rather say, let's look at traffic sources. So direct traffic, Google traffic, some people coming from Warrior forums, people coming from YouTube, stuff like this. And the interesting thing that you can do here is I can click on this and then either view only the segment, or in this case I'll just do highlight traffic through here. And all of a sudden now I'm seeing where are all these people going, the people who come from direct traffic. Or if I wanted to do this one instead, highlight traffic through here. It's all of a sudden showing me where these people are landing. And then I can do it again, highlight traffic through here, and now I'm seeing where all these people are going, where they're landing. So that's kind of a cool little tool that Google has here. You can zoom in and zoom out and look at the different things where people are going there. I want to talk about goals and filters. You can use these to get a lot more information out of analytics. And the way you want to do that actually is by going to your admin. And then you go ahead and choose one of your profiles, and you have goals and filters, okay? And a goal is basically, well, I'll show you. I'll start creating one. So you name the goal something, and then it can be, these are the possible goals that you can have. So you can say this goal has been reached when someone reaches a certain URL. For example, your thank you page once someone has purchased. Or it could be your opt-in thank you page once someone has opted in. The number of pages per visit, the number of visit duration events, I think gets a little bit more complicated, but these first three are pretty simple. You can add things in and add a goal. You can also add a funnel to the goal saying, hey, this goal is only reached if they hit the opt-in page coming directly from, if they hit the opt-in thank you page coming directly from the opt-in form page, then I know they opted in, things like that. So goals are a great way to get more information out of the data that Google's collecting for you. Filters are a different type of thing, and this is a way to only look at certain data within the data, a certain data set within the data that Google is showing you. So if I start a new filter, this is pretty complicated, and I'm just going to give you an overview, but let's just look at the predefined filters first. So let's say I say include only traffic from. So I've got these different things, traffic to a certain subdirectory. For example, if I just want to look at everything that's in my blog subdirectory, it's just an example. But if you use a custom filter, it becomes very, very powerful. For example, I can include, and then it gives me all sorts of options. I can include traffic only from certain things. You can see there's just a lot of ways that you can set up patterns, and then you go back to your dashboard and you sort of institute that filter, and then all the data you're looking at is, I only want to look at data of people who are, coming from such and such an ad or from such and such a post on this forum or things like that. So filters and goals are a really good way to get more data out of Google Analytics. Okay, a couple more things I wanted to show you. Linking AdWords and Google Analytics. You actually do this by going into your AdWords account. And the best thing really is to go to Google Analytics Help and just search linking analytics and AdWords, because I can show you now, but it's possible that the steps would change. And they've got a detailed list of steps for how you link those two so that Analytics has your AdWords data available. And then you can, for example, if I just go back here, and if I want to look under traffic sources, advertising, and I can look at my AdWords data, okay, because Analytics has access to my AdWords data and what's happening in my AdWords account. So that's another thing. If you're doing a lot of AdWords advertising, you can see that data in Analytics. The last thing that I wanted to show is the URL builder. Here under traffic sources, under sources, you can see one of the options is campaigns. And it's not going to show you any data there unless you use the Analytics URL builder to set up some campaigns. If you go to google.com and just search Analytics URL builder, you're going to find it. And this is basically a tool that Google provides that helps you set up a custom link to any page on your website. It's essentially a tracking link. So this is a great example of a link you would want to use for example, on a YouTube video, on a call to action overlay, or if you have this on an annotation that's linking to your associated website. If you're using Analytics to track this stuff, then you can use this URL builder to set up a campaign and all this information and data about the campaign, so that when you are in Analytics, you can look at your campaigns and see where, what's happening with your traffic from those campaigns.